This is my process for making a cut at the table saw. I'm going to walk you through what I'm thinking. In real time, this is often a minute or less, so it's boom, boom, boom. I'm going to try to give it a little bit of an explanation along the way about what am I thinking at each stage to help you understand if you're new or you've only used a table saw a few times or a long time ago in shop class and you're trying to catch up. Here's how I do it. For me, almost every cut begins at the bench. I'm identifying two things. What type of cut is it? Cross cut, rip cut? How important is the wood? How clean do I need the cut? If I'm doing, some pine or something, or it's not perhaps a glue joint, whatever I have in the table saw between a 24 tooth or a 40 tooth, I'm probably gonna leave in there. If it's some expensive or really hard wood, if I'm doing a glue joint, I'm gonna put in the 24 tooth rip blade. I want that clean, smooth through there. Otherwise, not the biggest deal. If it's a cross cut and I'm gluing straight from it like a miter, I'm putting the 60 tooth in there. Right now is when I decide what blade I want. If I need to go get it and put it in there, I'm doing that first while the saw is off. I don't have to worry about that later. The next thing I'm doing is I'm making my mark. I like to take my time when I'm doing my measuring. I like to double check. So I'm making my cut line here. I still usually check it again at the table, but I make my cut line, I pick my blade out, and then I head to the table. There's one variable, and it depends on what I've been doing before. If I've been using the dust collector for something else, I personally have to switch my hose around. So at this point, if my hose isn't already attached, I'm going to shove it in there and attach it. Most of the time, though, it's already in the table saw if I'm doing table saw cuts, so I'm heading there. But if you need to attach any kind of dust hose, just do it now so you have it ready when you need it. I'm gonna go with this piece today. It doesn't really matter the size here. I'm gonna talk about how I'd handle different sizes, and I'm going to use the cabinet saw because it's dark out and I don't wanna film outside, but this is the same process I used for years on my job site saw. Functionally, there's no real difference. I want to establish, first of all, is the power on? What kind of power situation is this? On my job site saw, for example, there's a nice little flip thing that comes down and covers the power button. I like to put that down while I'm setting everything up. On this guy, you got to pull it out, so there's not really any easy way to accidentally do it, but I want to know what the situation is here. Is the saw on? Is it plugged in? Is there a paddle I can flip down to cover it? That's the first thing essentially I'm doing as I get over here on my way over. I'm taking a peek. Some of them have a little light on them. Just be aware of what our power situation is at this point. Move this away from the blade and set this off to the side, and I'm looking down. I'm looking at the floor. What are my conditions like here? Do I have offcuts sitting all over the place that I could trip on? Do I have sawdust that I could slip on? I dry out my oily rags in this corner. I need to make sure that I don't have to worry about footing stability as I'm making this cut. It's one of the very first things I do is make sure this is clean. The next thing I do is I grab my eyewear and whatever push stick or push block I'm using, because I've already identified what type of cut I'm making and I know the size of my piece. I know which one of these push blocks or push sticks I'm going to go with. Take my eyewear. This board will sit over here. I place these on top so that I cannot miss them later when I go to set everything up for the final cut. I wear headphones normally, but this would be a time when I'd get ear protection and I'd have it there as well. I don't like to run the dust collector until I have to. I don't like to wear and tear on the motor. I also don't wear my safety glasses all the time in the shop because I wear normal glasses. If I didn't have normal glasses, I would probably just have these on already. That's just me personally. I put them on before a cut. The next thing I'm doing is I'm identifying what side of the board I want down and what side I want on the fence. Now, if you've milled the wood, you've got flat sides on either side and you've got one straight edge. You're obviously putting that up against the fence and whatever side down doesn't matter. This is just a piece of Home Depot pine. It's got one side that's better and one side that's worse. I haven't jointed it, I haven't done anything to it. Again, for years, I didn't have a bunch of tools and I would just cut straight from this stuff. What I want to minimize is any rocking or kind of rolling over on the side. So I'm looking, what side of this is going to give me the most stable cut? Okay, we've got a little twist here. But when I flip this over, I've got a big cup here and I've got rocking forward and backwards. That is the side I absolutely want to avoid. I want to place the cup facing down if I've got one. Then I come over, which edge is best here? Well, what I want to avoid is any kind of rocking back and forth on the side. So if there's any kind of bow in this, and again, I'm assuming you're not milling this ahead of time, I am sticking the hollow towards the fence. Now I have the benefit of a relatively long fence here, but I still always put the hollow towards the inside, as I do not want the board coming in and going like that. I'd rather have it kind of a little bit going that way than going in. And if you have that bow going in, it will often do that. I want to avoid that. So I'm looking for the most stable side down, wherever it rocks and moves the least, and the most stable side into the fence, wherever it moves the least this way. If you need to, mark that out. Just draw a little arrow on there. Then you'll know when you go to pick it up which way to go. I usually just set it down that direction, and I then pick it up from there, and I'm good to go. The next thing I'm doing is I'm identifying, do I need in-feed and out-feed support of any type? Now I've got a bench behind here. When I had my job site, so I didn't have a bench that matched the height. So it was either going on the floor, or if it was super long, I got out the sawhorse, whether I needed it in front or behind, either of those. I need to know, am I going to be able to like maneuver this piece, or do I need something here or something on the outfeed to feed it through? This is the point where I want to grab those and get them set up. I also want to know, do I need a feather board for this? Something like this, I'm not too worried. If we're going 5, 6, 7 feet long and I need that cut to be really clean, I'm grabbing a feather board and I'm putting it over here now, or at least on the table, so I make sure to put it in. We don't have to have that set in place yet, as we're still going to want to check the blade height, may get in your way. But have those things over here now, so again, you do not forget them when you're going to make the cut. One of the worst things is when you get into a cut and you realize that thing is going straight over on the way out, and it's going to be hard to hold this really long board down as you're going through. At this point, I'm setting my blade height, just putting it down there. I'm a 1 tooth above person. I know there's a ton of debate about this, but I just put a tooth above, whether it's a little above or a little, it doesn't matter that much to me. I don't bury the tooth in there, and I sure as heck don't have it sticking way out. 1 tooth above is what I'm aiming for. I set that there now. And the main reason I set that now is that I use a variety of thickness of blades, so I can't trust this measuring system on here. It's set up for a normal Diablo blade. This thin Kerfroid is not the same thickness. I need the blade up so that I can measure. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make that measurement and set that fence, or if it's an odd number, I'm just going to line it up by eye. Either one of those is something I'll do depending upon whether it's a very exact number, or if it's just I need it at this spot, I don't know what the number is, just do it by eye. At this point, I'm just a couple steps away. This is where I need to get everything in place and visualize this cut. So I'm deciding, where is this push block going to be, or push stick, when I get ready to use it. I prefer to either have it sitting on here if it's something thinner like this. Now I have the benefit of this being a giant beefy chunk of a fence, so on my DeWalt job site saw, it just all went off to the right hand side if possible. Obviously we'd prefer it not to be on our left, so I'm setting that here. I'm going to make sure that's within reach. This is also when I then put on my eyeglasses so that I don't forget about them. And if you need hearing protection, go ahead and put that in now. Once I've got those things there, I'm going to visualize this cut and make sure one more time that I'm not going to need some kind of support. If I find myself having to do one of these to get this thing up there, that's a little on the edge, and it's probably good to do the support. I like to just, we've got the saw off, just kind of come over here and just almost like I'm practicing a pull shot. Just where my hand's going to be when I'm doing this. If I feel comfortable at this point, I'm good there. I've already visualized it. I know what I'm doing ahead of time. Now, depending upon your saw, there may be a few things you need to do or don't do. On this one, there is a locking mechanism on the height of the blade. I always do one more check to lock that and to push this down. On the DeWalt job site saw, this is be when I obviously double check the fence again and then push up that little paddle switch that covers it, since we have that on while we're doing all the setup. It's a little one that blocks. Most job site saws have them, the button that you push. This is when I go ahead and lift that up because I'm almost ready for my cut. Now I visualize this so I know where my hands are going. I'm going to move my body as much as I can within reason off to the left of the blade. I know sometimes when you're cutting really thin stuff, you don't want to be doing this. That's not particularly great. But I want to somehow have as much of my body as possible off to the left side of this. I'm not Superman. I am not able to dodge an offcut that comes flying back from kickback. I'm going to minimize the target space personally. I've been lucky. I've never had terrible kickback. I've had one kind of minor mini thing go flying back, scared the living crap out of me. Fortunately, it was just a very thin piece, but it reminded me, always try to put myself somewhere to the left of the blade to at least avoid that kind of interior kickback. Now, depending upon the size of the workpiece, you will either need to begin setting it up on your out or your infeed support if it's some kind of really long piece, or you can either start here, set that up, and then turn on, or a lot of times I just flick this on and then go to do my cut. That's totally dependent upon the size of the workpiece. So at this point, I've got everything in position. I've got, well, these would be on my face right now. I've got my push blocks, I've double checked my fence, my blade height is right, my measurement is right, floor is clean, I know where I'm standing, and I've already visualized this cut. If I've got infeed or out support in need, I've got those set in place. Never a bad idea to take one last look and make sure those are both in place. But if you did this correctly, you will already have those. At this point, we're essentially ready to make our cut. There are two things we need to do here. One, this is where I turn the dust collection on. I don't like to leave that motor running if I don't have to, so I turn it on right before the cut. We will have our eye protection, ear protection, all of that on right now. All I am doing now is paying attention to three things. The first thing I'm going to do is turn the power on. I like to start back a little bit. Some people start up and on here and they reach down, however you want to do that. So we've got the power on. I feed like a pool cue, I guess I would call it that. I don't move this hand except for at one point. I feed from the back or from the side, kind of like this, and I'm going through. And I'm looking at three things here. My hand placement to make sure I'm not going to run it into the blade. I'm looking for any pinching or splitting that's going on here as this is engaging. And I'm looking for if the board is moving away from the fence. Now, sometimes we can adjust and keep it against the fence if our pressure inward is not enough. We're trying to guide that along there with some inward pressure. Sometimes though, the wood will begin to bow out. Not much we can do about that. Just keep going. If it's gonna bow, it was poorly dried or pressure in the tree, whatever. However, if we do notice we're getting some pinching, we then need to be aware in our mind that there is a chance we will have to turn the saw off and back this out. Most of the time you can still finish the cut. This isn't the biggest motor in the world. It's the same size as the DeWalt job site saw, so it doesn't have the oomph to power through a bad pinch. There are times when I've had to back it out, but I just want to know ahead of time visually. Usually if the pinch is getting bad, you'll start to feel it and that you'll be pushing a lot harder than you want, and you've got to decide at some point, am I pushing so hard that I'm probably damaging the sharpness of the blade? Heat is the enemy of sharpness. If that starts burning and getting hot, it's going to dull that blade faster. So when you choose to stop pushing and turn it off or to keep going is context dependent. I don't like to have to force too much. However, if I am 90% of the way through, I'm probably going to finish that cut because getting it off of there in that position is going to be very awkward. Usually I can finish it. But let's assume we're not getting a push. At this point, there's going to be a transition between using my hand and using a push block or push stick. This is the one time this left hand does any movement. And that's because I want to keep this board moving at least somewhat as it goes through. We get a cleaner cut if we have a stable feed rate on our way through. Ideally, we don't want to be stopping and starting and stopping and starting. So I'm going to release my right hand, and at that time, this hand isn't really moving very far. It may only cover 1/4 of an inch, 3/8 of an inch, but that's going to just keep it moving a little bit while I grab this. And I'm looking to engage this when the majority of this board is obviously on the table, but also when the pressure point is going to be over the table. If this is a long board, I don't want this happening. I want to make sure that when I engage this, no matter how hard I press down, it's not going to pop up on me. So some people engage it earlier. I wait, I think, what is the correct amount of time so that I can't accidentally pop it up, but that's up to you. I've got that engaged. Obviously, my hand goes back to just staying right there. I'm only moving it for that one little moment there, and I'm just kind of finger walking it. I finish with a pretty good hefty push through here. Now we've got our body slightly off to the left because we would like a chance to avoid any kickback, perhaps some kind of matrix type move if possible. My hand is going to essentially not cross a certain point, and that point is going to be about 1 inch or so in front of this throat plate. Now your throat plate depth may be more or less, but let's call it about 2 inches away from the blade if the blade were at full height. Obviously, the higher it gets, the less we have here. So wherever it would be at full height, 2 inches back, for me, that's about here. So once that board starts passing that, that's just done. That hand can't do any more work. I give it a pretty big oomph on the way through, and I like to just totally throw it off the table. Now we have to be careful here because a lot of times on a rip cut, if we don't have something that's applying force to either side, we have a leftover piece right here. And sometimes you'll see it kind of like doing a little vibrate in there and getting a little close to the blade. And in theory, our riving knife should keep that away from there. But if this board pinched on the way through, that offcut may have a bit of a bow in it. It may be getting close. So when we push through, we don't want to step over here. We want to pull back and away. And this is kind of a simultaneous movement where I'm pulling back and away, and I knee my saw off. I do not like having to take my eye off of that offcut piece to go down here and push that. In one kind of quick movement, I knee that thing. The job site saw it was a little higher, kind of like a hip. So it'd be kind of like an up that, but this one, perfect knee height. I'm there, I'm through. Saw is now off because I've kneed it, and I back away. I don't want to be anywhere near that thing until it is fully stopped. Once it is fully stopped, unless I have a bunch of cuts to make, I generally put the blade down. I don't want to accidentally push this thing into the blade and bend it or something like that. I push the blade down, I lock it in place, and I'm done. That's my table saw cut. Ideally at that point, I can then remove any leftover piece there, any offcut, and we're good to go. And you can go on to your next cut or your next stage. All right, thanks for joining me today. Bye.